Okay, assalamu alaikum and good evening, wherever you are. Hope you are well. Okay, let me try and get this started. Let me just get the presentation sharing, and then I'll say hello to everybody in the chat. Sorry about starting this a bit late. Having a little bit of a busy weekend. All right, okay. Three with us. Who do we have in the background? Assalamu alaikum, man. Sorry about my background. Was this window open? Let me just check. No, just some joyriders outside. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, man. قل ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. We have don't know what this is. First time we've met you. Perhamid, I can't say that. I'm sorry. And Hamid Hassan, assalamu alaikum. And Rihanna, good to see you again. We have, I think the first time I've seen you, Round Maiden, salam. And who else do we have with us? The Perfect Dawah. Perfect Dawah. How are you? Almir. And Azri. Hope you're well. And there we have our priors. Okay. And Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad. All right, let's get on with this. Let me make a presentation like that. So I thought today I'd go over the infamous backbone and the ribs verses, the ones which I have actually said, until I've understood them. I think you should. Religion really is based on sincerity and honesty, even against yourself, against your parents, even against the Qur'an, even against the Qur'an. So, I've always thought of these as scientific error in the Qur'an. One of the few which I did look at it and say, okay, that is because it seemed specific enough to be an error, right? So most of the whole issue of the scientific miracles in the Quran that some Muslims talk about, or the conversely, the scientific errors, I've always pretty much haven't looked at these as anything too spectacular because it's very obvious these things are very vague in the Quran, right? So those who take them and make scientific miracles out of them, they are extrapolating, right? They're extrapolating the science out of the verses because the verses themselves are very vague, and they're also not in language which is trying to teach. It's trying to teach scientific truths. It's just not, okay? It's always in language which is where God is trying to inspire awe, contemplation of nature, of the creation, that sort of stuff. And it's always sort of it's something that's accessible to everyone. What is mentioned there. That's the general rule of thumb. And of course, it works both ways, right? So because that's what people will say, against the scientific miracles in the Quran paradigm, that it's too vague, right? But that works the other way around as well. It's also too vague to be an error, okay, when it is. But this one, because of how I used to think about it, I always would say it's an error. And when people ask me, I would say, look, this looks like a scientific error, and you shouldn't. I think it's detrimental to your ability to progress spiritually and progress in understanding the Quran to say that it isn't, if that's how you see it, that's how you should say it. Okay, if it looks like to you like it's a scientific error, say it's a scientific error, and we can discuss why that should, I mean, for some people, they might say, okay, this shatters your whole faith, right? Find one error in the Quran, it shatters your whole faith. Well, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that, because you can have a faith that, no, there is something here which I don't get. Right now, if I'm just going to be honest about it, it looks wrong. Okay, but there's something in it maybe which I don't understand. And I always tell people to do that with verses of the Quran which they find problematic. Put it on the shelf. Okay, you don't have it now, maybe you will in the future. Especially when it comes to things like science, with science always changing. I mean, we are not living in any magical time where the science that we have now will still be accepted in 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years. Okay, this isn't a special time in science where everything has been found to be absolutely right and accurate, and that's it. Okay, but this, of course, I mean, the way it's put out is that the semen comes out between the backbone and the ribs, and that is something which I don't think would ever have changed, right? So I used to look at these verses and thought, look, there's no way. I thought I would die before knowing how to read these properly. Okay, and I have to give the credit to Asadullah. He's one of those da'wah guys. Okay, I think he comes up on the EF da'wah or on Hamza's Den sometimes. Okay, and he writes for the Yaqeen Institute, and he's the one who, he wrote it in a paper which is very, very long-winded. Okay, to be honest, and there's pretty much no need. I mean, I read just the premise and I got it straight away, and it was like a facepalm moment for me. Like, how didn't I see this? Okay, how obvious it is, and that's how these things should resolve, I think. Any things which you find really problematic in the Quran, okay, you shouldn't need to bend yourself or try really hard to accept an interpretation. Okay, it should fit. Okay, if it's the right thing, it should make sense straight away. It should just click, right? And you should think to yourself, "Oh my God, how did I not see that before?" So that's how I feel of these verses. Anyway, I've rambled on a bit too long there, so let me just get into it. So what do the verses say? So let's start, because it's a short surah. It's from the beginning of surah to those verses. So let's just start from the top. So it says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, was-samaa'i wat-tariq," right? By the sky and the night comer. At-tariq literally means somebody who comes in, tarak, yeah, sort of knocks on your door at night. Okay, at-tariq is somebody who knocks on your door in the middle of the night. Okay, and then it says here, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقُ. Okay, and what can make you know what is this Tariq? And it says an-najmu thaqib. Okay, it is a star which is piercing, like thaqib, pierces. And the idea here is that it's something which will pierce the darkness. The najm is light. Okay, and we're talking about a night visitor. Okay, comes at night. So in the darkest time of your life, a ray of light will pierce, will come down to you, and it will pierce, and you will see. What will you see? You will come to see, in kullu nafsin lamma alayha hafiz. There is no soul, but it has a protector or guardian over it. Okay, in that moment, you come to see that. When you think, there's, I'm in the middle of darkness. There's no help. There's nothing. There will be something that will pierce that. Okay, and you will come to see that, no, there is a watcher over me. That God is watching. Okay. So that's the theme behind that first part. Then it shifts. It goes, okay, then it's sort of like, in this, it's making the human being understand his worth, right? It's like bigging him up, okay, right? So it's extolling you, that you are a special soul. Every soul, in kullu nafsin lamma alayha hafiz. Every soul has a hafiz for it, has a protector or a watcher. Okay, so it's it could be inflating somebody's pride with this kind of talk, right? So what does the next verse say? It says, فَلْيَنْظُرُ الْإِنسَانُ مِمَّا خُلِقَ. So let man observe or look, okay, from what he was created. Okay, before you get too proud, okay, look at what you were created from. خُلِقَ مِن مَاءٍ دَافِقٍ. He was created from a fluid ejected. Okay, a fluid ejected. يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب, emerging from between the backbone and the ribs. Okay, يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب. Okay, it exits between the backbone. Illustrates from between the backbone and the ribs. الصلب والترائب. Okay, and so it's here again. It's saying, look, this is where your origins are from. Okay, so again, it's just trying to, it's telling you, look, and despite this humble origins of you, you still kullu nafsin lamma alayha hafiz. Every soul has a protector of it. Okay, and in the darkest time of night, okay, you can have a night visitor. Okay, and najm thaqib, you can have light that will pierce the darkness. Okay. And the verse after that, it says, إِنَّهُ عَلَى رَجْعِهِ لَقَادِرٌ. And this will come to at the end. Indeed, he, Allah, it doesn't say Allah in the verse, just إِنَّهُ, he is able to return him, okay, to bring him back. Okay, so basically the premise behind it, once you see it, I mean, it's very obvious, okay, but I'll walk you through it. So first of all, look at how the Quran discussed sex and toiletries, okay? So, things, anything to do with sex and the toilet, how does it talk about it? And generally in Arabic, how is it considered? I mean, I studied this actually when I studied the Ihya of Imam al-Ghazali, okay, and one of the things that discuss are the sins of the tongue, okay, and one of the sins of the tongue is vulgarity, and what vulgarity is defined as is to be very very explicit and abrupt and speak in a very coarse way, okay, either sexual intercourse, or the sexual organs and private parts, or calls of nature and what comes out of it, urine, feces, that kind of stuff, okay. And if you notice, most of the swear words and the things that people the things which are censored, right, the four-letter words, they're mostly to do with this. They're mostly to do with these things, okay. That's vulgarity, and the Quran, of course, is never vulgar, okay. The Quran is never vulgar. So in all of these things, it speaks about them in a very subtle way and uses euphemisms, okay, euphemisms. So it alludes to something, but it doesn't say it directly. It will say something else, okay. So there are many examples about this. So if we look at this, this is a key one. So we're saying he's the one who created you from one soul, and then he created from it its mate, لِيَسْكُنَ إِلَيْهَا, so that he may find solace with it, to find a home. Like second is like home, find a home with her. Okay. Then it says, فَلَمَّا تَغَشَّاهَا حَمَلَتْ حَمْلًا خَفِيفًا فَمَرَّتْ بِهِ. فَلَمَّا تَغَشَّاهَا. This is the key part. And it says here, puts it in here, and when he covers her. What does that mean when he covers her? She carries a light burden and continues therein. What is it? It's talking about, of course, sexual intercourse and then pregnancy. Okay, when he covers her, all right. Of course, somebody could look at this, and nobody does, of course, because it will be ridiculous, right? And say, hey, the Quran doesn't understand how babies are made, right? How sexual intercourse works. Okay, yeah, the man doesn't just have to cover the woman. Of course, it doesn't just have to cover the woman, but this is a euphemism. It's just saying it's alluding to something rather than saying it explicitly, because to say it explicitly is vulgar. Okay, it's a vulgarity. Okay, so that's one example. And it says, of course, فَلَمَّا أَثْقَلَتْ, and when she became heavy, and they call upon their Lord. Okay, another example, of course, in these two surahs, the same thing is mentioned, which is لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء, when you touch women. Okay, and then the what it means is, of course, sexual intercourse again. So it's talking about ritual impurity from salah and things like that. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la taqrabu as-salata wa antum sukara. O you who have faith, do not come near to salah while you are drunk, until you know what you say. And wala junuban, and no in a state of janaba, except while traveling. Ila abri sabil hatta taghtasilu, until you wash. Okay. And then here's the part which I've put the translation for. When kuntum marda aw ala safarin, and if you're ill or on a journey, or one of you comes from the place of relieving himself. جاء أحدكم من الغائط. If one of you has come from the ghait. What does al-ghait? It doesn't actually mean toilet, it just means the wilderness. It literally, like how we say in English, call of nature. If one of you has come from a call of nature. All right, so it doesn't say when you actually go and release urine or feces. It won't say that. Okay, it will use this kind of euphemism. أو لامستم النساء, again, or if you touch women. Okay, and of course here what it means is if you've had sex with women. Okay, so if you are ill or on a journey, or one of you has come from the call of nature, or you touch women and you don't find water, then tayammamu. Okay, use the dry ablution, right, that we know about, right, that you can just wipe on clean earth and use that to wipe your face and your your hands, and that takes the place of water, so you don't need to wash. So that happens in two verses. Both of them, they say the same thing. إِذَا لَامَسْتُمْ النِّسَاءَ, when you touch women. It doesn't, of course, mean when you touch women. Okay, just touch women and that's it. Even though some, of course, of the jurisprudence have said this, right? Just touching a woman breaks your wudu. All right. Okay, and again here, وَإِن كُنتُم مَرْضَى, the same in the next verse. And if you are unwell or have come from a journey, or one of you has come from the wilderness and you touch women, okay, لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, but you find no water, فَتَيَمَّمُوا, so then do the tayammum. So again, it's that euphemism, okay, in both cases here for going to the toilet and for sex. Now this is the one which I like the most, to be honest. I think this is a great example, which is in about the rules for fasting. So in Surah 2, verse 187, has a subtext regarding fasting rules. Basically, the subtext, what you can read sort of between the lines, is that you can have sex until the morning. But it does this in a very subtle way by switching from, first of all, speaking about women, okay, when you can approach them or not, okay. Then it says, and eat and drink until the morning, okay, until the morning. Then it switches back to speaking about women. So the subtext in there is clearly very easy to see. We'll look at it now. I hope it's clear to see in English anyway, is that it's saying also, you can have sex until the morning. So this is how it goes. أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةُ الصِّيَامِ وَرَفَثُوا إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. It has been made permissible for you the night preceding the fasting to go to your wives. And it's saying, and again, this rafath is another euphemism, an allusion, okay, to go to your wives, okay, it means for sex, okay. And then it says they are garments for you and you are garments for them, okay. God knows that you used to deceive yourselves. It says here, it doesn't say that, but anyway, let's just move on. So he accepted your repentance, or that he turned to you. It shouldn't say repentance. So he turned to you, okay, because tab literally means turn to you. He turned to you and forgave that shortcoming. Because really, the best kind of fasting should have been where this isn't even happening at night, right? And then it says, فَالْآنَ, so now, بَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. So now, have relations with them and seek that which God has decreed for you, and eat and drink until the white streak of dawn can be distinguished from the black streak. You see how that transition goes? Okay, from speaking about, so now have relations with them and seek what God has decreed for you, and eat and drink until the white streak of dawn is distinguished from the black streak. Okay, so it's clearly sort of like making that transition and subtly saying, yes, you can do this, bashiruhunna, until this time as well, not just eat and drink. Okay. And then it says thumma atimmu, and it continues thumma atimmu as-siyam, then continue the fast until nightfall, and do not have relations with them as long as you are staying for worship in the mosques. So you see how that transition works, okay? How that it's very subtle, right? But it definitely puts across that meaning, okay? Then moving from speaking about women and relations to them, and it says, and eat and drink until the morning, and then complete the fast until the night, and don't touch them, okay? So long as you are in the mosques. It doesn't even mention the women here again, because it's sort of like it's continuing the whole thing from before. So it's a very eloquent, very nice way of putting that in there. Okay? And then it even says in it, كَذَلِكَ, this is how God makes things clear for you. God is making things clear in this way. Okay, you could say, okay, it's not clear, no, but God, this is clear, okay, for anybody who can, it's basic understanding. You don't need to be a genius to get this, okay? And God will explain things in this way because, again, He's not going to be vulgar about these kind of things, okay? And say, okay, I'm sex until the morning. Okay, so returning back to backbone and ribs and the fluid that is ejected or spilled out between them. So this is a clear euphemism for, I think, ejaculation during sex between a man, who is the backbone here, and the woman, okay, the ribs. So you can see that, first of all, the word sulb only appears in one other place in the Quran. Okay, so it comes again as a plural word, and it means the loins. Okay, in the phrase, your sons who are from your loins, when it's talking about your biological sons, and whom you can't marry. So you can't marry the wives, the divorced women of your biological sons. So the phrase used is أبنائكم الذين من وحلال أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم. Those who are from your aslab, from your sulbs. Okay, so those your sons also prohibited for you are the wives of your sons who are from your loins. So sulb can take the place, can mean loins. Okay, loins. Of course, here it doesn't mean the backbones. You could say if you want to translate it here as backbones. Of course, it's not talking about the backbone. It's talking about those who are from your loins. Okay, so sulb can take that place. And so I'll put more than one translation. There's you can check those out, and how many of the translators will put it in this kind of way. Yeah, your wives of your sons proceeding from your loins, wives of your sons who are of your loins, and the wives of your sons who spring from your own loins. That whole wording, and that's the only other time the word sulb comes in the Quran. It comes as this plural, and it means loins. Okay, so we can take it in the verses we're discussing to mean the loins. Okay, the loins. It doesn't have to mean the backbone. Okay, it can mean the loins, or literally the private parts, right? Of the man, of course, because it's talking about the man. Sulb also literally means hard, right? Something which is sulb is something which is hard, okay? And of course, it's used sometimes. Okay, you can put it like backbone. So I put this, so maybe it's you could say boner, right? Comes out from between the bone and the ribs. Okay, as for the word taraib, ribs, the connotation of ribs with women is obvious. Okay, for even in Arab cultures and all around. Okay, that whether it's influence from the Bible, which is not correct or not, who knows? But the connotation that ribs and women is obvious one. Okay, though we could argue it isn't Quranic, but we can look at other ways. Okay, because first of all, why would the word use this? Why use this word, the tribe? Okay, it's not a common word for ribs. The common word for ribs is adla', dala'. Even the hadith which say that a woman was created from the rib of a man, it uses the word dila'. Dila' is the normal word for the ribs, right? The ribs. And the reason for this, okay, the taraib, in fact, the word taraib actually refers specifically to the upper ribs of a woman. Okay, in Arab usage, old Arabic usage, it refers specifically to ribs of a woman, not a man. The ribs of the woman, the upper ones, which are the smallest ribs, the most curved and smallest ribs in the upper part of the chest, those are them. So in fact, even in the earliest tafsirs of the verse we're talking about between the backbone and ribs, because the early tafsirs, the very early ones, they don't really give large tafsirs. They mostly just look at the words. They say this word means that, and this word means that. Okay, so they didn't look at this and start to like wonder what it's talking about in terms of science. They just looked at it and said, okay, the taraib, that means the ribs, and it's feminine, it's for the women, and sulb, okay, it means the backbone of the man. That's basically all they said, and then they moved on. What happened later is that, and this is the problem with taking these scientific miracles of the Quran, is that later, that when Muslims translated the Greek sciences, that's when the tafsirs got influenced by that. Okay, the tafsirs got influenced by that Greek science, and they started saying that the semen originates between the backbone and the ribs of the man himself. Okay, whereas the earlier tafsirs said no, what the taraib meant is the taraib of the woman, and the backbone meant here is the backbone of the man, and that's all they said. They didn't try to say exactly what's going on. And in the Quran also, this root is used specifically for women. In some of the verses, it refers to the women of paradise. Okay, so in these verses there, the word used is atrab, and you can hear that. Atrab, taraib, taraib. Okay, taraba. Okay, the same root. And so you have this verse, وعندهم قاصرات الطرف أتراب. Okay, and with them are قاصرات, limiting their gazes, and it's in the feminine. Of equal age, atrab. Atrab means sort of equal age, and that was like in a way, I think that's how the verse, the idea for the ribs came about. Okay, because ribs are fairly equal. Okay, but atrab point is it's similar root, and it's used, of course, just for women in the Quran. So that, you know, Tara'ib can stand for women and the Sulb can stand for man. That fits. They both fit to be are fit for a euphemism. Okay. So putting it all together, it reads like this. Of course, I think the key word in getting this right is ma'in dafiq, the word dafiq, which means basically spilled out or ejaculated or that kind of thing. Okay. And so when we think about the sort of scientific error interpretation that, you know, between the backbone and the ribs, then that's where it's created. Okay. And the Quran isn't saying that's where semen is created. Okay. Even if you take that other view, the word being used is dafiq, ejaculated, literally, you know, spilled out. Okay. And that doesn't happen inside. It doesn't happen inside. And also the verse is saying, look, let the human being look, so they can see this. Okay. Anyway, so I've written here, after the human being is told, unfortunately more typos, that he has some divine care and concern that is on the lookout for him, he is then told and his attention is taken to examine and see what he can actually see, the lowly fluid from which he is created. So paraphrasing the section, I'd say, so let man look and, you know, be humbled by looking at just what substance he was created from. He was created from a fluid that is ejected or ejaculated out, and we all know where that happens in order to create. Okay, for a human being to actually be created, we were created. Okay, where did this ejaculation happen? Where was the exiting of this fluid when it exited? Where did that happen? It happened in between the sulb and the tara'ib. It exits while, I mean during, what happens between the backbone, the man, and the ribs. So that's the way I would look at that. And why is this mentioned? Why even is that mentioned? The whole thing is mentioned in the end. It is mentioned to humble, like we said from the previous verses, which have raised man's self-worth. And secondly, to lead on to the last verse, which says, إِنَّهُ عَلَىٰ رَجْعِهِ لَقَادِرٌ. Truly, he's able to bring him back. That just as you have been created from such a fluid, a lowly fluid, and you know you are a standing, walking, thinking, moving human being, all right. In a similar way, even when you are dead and dust, you know, God can still bring you back from something lowly. Okay, so that's what that verse is talking about. So just as he created you from a lowly fluid, from that just you know, that ejaculation, right? He will create you again when you are dead. And that's all I have. Okay, let me leave that here and attend to what we have in the chat. We have ZA. No, look at this first thing I see. I didn't know this. A kafir is an idol worshipper. That is in Portuguese language. That's interesting. I didn't know that. You know, I would highly recommend everybody to try reading Toshihika's this guy. I mean, I can't pronounce his name very well. Sorry, he's Japanese. Okay, but it's Toshihika. Yeah, Toshihika Izutsu. That's it. Izutsu. He wrote a really interesting book called The Ethico Religious Concepts in the Quran, where he actually went and looked through a lot of the main Quranic terms. And I think that was brilliantly well done. And we have in the background is the A. I'm going to bring you on now. Is that okay? Assalamu alaikum. Oh, are we there?
Hello.
Okay, wait. Hi, wa alaikum assalam. How are you?
This is a great
Yes?
session, very informative. I actually wanted to ask a somewhat unrelated topic. Can I do that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so what does the Quran say like about women wearing hijab?
Yeah, women wearing hijab, of course, that's one of the things which I think has been overblown a lot. Of course, hijab in the Quran isn't at all, when that word comes up, it's not talking about anything to do with women's covering. all right? The word actual hijab, just the linguistic word of hijab. It doesn't come up for that. It just means in the Quran a barrier, okay? And it's used in completely different contexts, right? It's used once only, I suppose, with women when it comes to the wives of the Prophet, okay? That when people used to come to him, because people used to come to his houses all the time and ask his women for things, okay? Especially the poor people, okay, because the Prophet's houses were like, they were like places of charity. People would come to them asking for, the poor people would come asking for food, for this or whatever. So the Quran says, if you ask them for something, the wives of the Prophet, ask them from behind a hijab, which basically was a curtain. Okay, so then the women wouldn't have to always, every time somebody was coming, they'd have to, get dressed properly, and be fully dressed modestly, etc. Okay, they could just speak from behind the curtain. So that's it. In terms of actual hijab, the Quran, in terms of like women's clothing and modesty, it doesn't say you have to cover your hair. Basically, it says cover the cleavage. All right, that's the main thing which is addressed in the Quran, like explicitly. Okay, the women of the Jahiliyyah, of the in the Prophet's time, some of them would they would cover their hair anyway, because that's just the environment in that in the desert and the heat, both for men and women, they would cover their heads. Okay, both men and women would cover their heads, cover just cover their heads, all right, and they would cover it with a khimar, and that's what khimar is called. It's a head covering, right? It covers the head. So they will basically, but what the women would do, they would leave their cleavages open. They would wear like low cut things, right? And leave their cleavages open. And the Quran refers to those as jiyub, like pockets. Basically, if you can, think of it, right? The two breasts of a woman, they sort of like make a pocket in the middle, right? So it's called like pockets, right? Jiyub. So it just basically told the women, let them drape their khimars over their jiyub, right? And that's about it, okay? And of course, that doesn't. People now, those who are pro, women must cover their heads and hair. They will say, look, the women in the Jahiliyyah used to do that, okay? And so the Quran is saying you have to do that, okay? But no, the Quran was just telling them that's what they have to cover, okay? If they didn't have khimars at all, they would be told to cover with something else. It was just utilitarian. They have khimars on their head, just drape it around and cover their jube. If their jube were already covered, that verse wouldn't have been revealed. If they were already covering the area, that verse wouldn't be revealed. In the end, it's basically telling women, the Quran, the general idea is just to dress modestly. Dress modestly as what your environment, when people look at you, they would say that you're not trying to be sexually provocative. Okay, it doesn't really go into big detail. Okay, the Quran doesn't go into huge detail or focus so much as people do now over how women dress. It's not that involved. If you're interested, I did write a number of posts, Reddit posts on that topic. There was one where I was requested to write about it because the hadith. There's one hadith which people, those who are, say you must cover your head. They bring that up. So somebody asked me to respond to that, and I wrote it. And alhamdulillah, it's been sort of like in the progressives. I don't know if you know about Reddit, but on Reddit there's this progressives Muslims subreddit, and that post, so I wrote it for them, and they use it all the time when anybody brings up the issue, because it is constantly brought up on that. So I could send it. Let me see if I can actually bring it up now,
Yeah.
and put it in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, and a
Yeah. Go ahead.
closely related thing to that is there's also a verse in the Quran which says وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, like, and stay in your houses. And then there are some scholars who actually went on to say, oh, look, women, they shouldn't be on parliaments, and they shouldn't be in their job is to just be at home. So what is the correct meaning of that word?
Well, that is addressing solely. It literally is specifically addressing the women of the Prophet. It's saying from the beginning, Ya Nisa Nabi, or women of the Prophet. So it has nothing to do generally with women at all. It can't. It's literally addressing the wives of the Prophet, and it's telling them, remember, what is mentioned in your home of the verses of God and the hikmah, because the wives of the Prophet were supposed to be a source of wisdom. They were the mothers of the believers. They were, they were supposed to be people who were given charity. They were supposed to be, they were supposed to have that kind of function, okay, in society, in the Prophet society. So they will be told to stay in their homes where people can find you, basically, because people were going to come to them. It wasn't stay in your home so that nobody sees you. Okay, it just means basically stay in your homes, like stay mostly in your homes. Okay, let people know where to find you. All right, and of course, if people say that, I mean, the traditional scholars tell them, why didn't the Prophet's wives stay in their homes? They didn't stay in their homes like locked up and didn't go anywhere. Aisha, led an army, right? She led an army. She used to go to Hajj. She used to go all over the place. And she actually, like I said, led the army, led a rebellion against Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? So she didn't stay in home. Of course, Salama did tell her, use that verse, tell her, look, stay, God is telling you to stay in your home, right? But even Salama, she didn't just sit in the home all day, right? She did go out, she did speak. When one of the Umayyad caliphs came to Medina and sort of like said, was saying things which were against the religion, shall we say, she went out and spoke against that. Okay, Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, used to go out and speak to people, go out, and so that's basically it. Those verses are literally directly just speaking about the wives of the Prophet. It can't be taken. What they will try to tell you is, don't you want to be like the wives of the Prophet? That's what they'll sort of tell you. Like, God is telling them to stay at home, so you should stay at home. No, you're not in the position of being one of the wives of the Prophet, or a place where people will come to you for knowledge and guidance and that sort of thing. I mean, it says sort of a similar thing to what's said about the believers when it talks about those who go out for fighting. It says, it is not for the faithful, the Muslims, to all go out and fight. It lets some of them stay back, okay, so they can learn the deen and learn the religion, right? So they gain understanding of the religion, so then they can warn their people when they come back. So tell them that you don't go out, stay there, be people of dedicated to knowledge, right? Be people of dedicated to knowledge, so then you can advise others when they come back. Okay, that doesn't mean they want to know. It's just that sort of function. The Prophet's wives are supposed to have that kind of function. Is that clear?
Yep, understand.
Okay, I'm looking for that post. Here we go. Let me how do I share this? There we go. Copy the link and let me put it in the chat, okay?
Yep.
All right, so there it is. All right. Okay, thanks a lot. What do you have anything else you want to mention?
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, feel free if you want to stay on, and if you think of something else or anything else you want to ask, do feel free to do so. Thanks again. Thanks. I think this is the second time you've come on, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Where are you calling from, if you don't mind me asking?
UAE.
All right, the UAE. Excellent. Very close neighbors here then. And all right, brilliant. I'm just want to check in on the chat. I don't think I'll be able to catch up with what people are discussing. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything to contribute to in the discussion. Okay. All right, brilliant. Okay, so if there's nobody else who's going to come on, I'll probably end the stream in around 5 minutes time. Again, sorry for those of you who maybe are watching later and tried to were expecting me to come on a bit earlier. I've been a little bit busy. and so I couldn't start it a little bit earlier. And by the way, people, I did end up speaking with Aaron Ra, so the guy who is doing the Qur'an lessons for the infidel series. So he's an atheist activist, and I went on to his stream. When was it? 2 weeks ago, where they were reading Surah al-Jum'ah and Surah al-Saf. And that was my first time on it. And while I was on there, he invited me to speak one-on-one. We did that today. To be honest, it didn't go too well. I didn't. I wasn't expecting the kind of discussion we had. It was going to be a discussion of why do you believe, and I sort of expected it to be similar. Maybe that's the problem. I expected it to be similar to what I did previously with what's the name, Apostate Aladdin. So I went to his why do you believe, and the way he conducted it, I think that was probably the best way that we should conduct these things, because he was just wanting basically to speak to people about let the other side, let the person who calls in express why they believe and why they have faith. But with Aaron, when I went on his stream, it sort of like descended more into him listing a lot of the problems that he sees with the Quran. It says this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and so on. Of course, I'm not going to be able to answer all of those in a sitting like that. So it really, I did get some points across, but it wasn't a very beneficial talk. And most of the time, it was just basically me saying, him saying, the Quran says this, and I'm saying, sorry, but no, it doesn't. And basically, that's it. So it didn't get anywhere. It didn't really get anywhere. But I did propose to him that we'd have a different kind of one-on-one discussion, and I sent him an email as well. So I proposed that I choose one surah, okay, short surah or short passage of the Quran, and he does the same. He chooses something which he finds very problematic. Well, I told him to actually choose 3, and then I'll pick the one which I can deal with, because I'm not. It's not like I can deal with everything that he could bring out, but I'm pretty sure that out of a choice of 3, I could make a case for 1. And then what we do is we'd actually have a stream where we actually discuss that. I would discuss how I see the surah which I'm talking about, and the surah which he brings, or the passage he brings, and he would see how he sees it. And so I thought that would be much more beneficial, because we'd actually be able to actually speak on the actual verses and words used and what's happening there. So I proposed that to him, and the other thing I proposed was related to the Qur'an's challenge. So I wrote about that on Reddit, the Qur'an's challenge. Did I send him the link? I think I sent him the link, because of course he was saying they talked about that in his stream, and of course his stream is mostly most of the input he gets is from ex-Muslims. So of course they were just saying it's a rubbish challenge. It's fallacious. It doesn't have any back. Blah blah, all that kind of stuff. So I sent him my post on that. But I was proposing actually a different. I have an adaptation for this challenge, for the Quran's challenge, and the adaptation is that to agree, which I proposed to him, that we would agree on one short surah. Okay, try to agree on what it says, and then for him or those with him to try to improve it. Okay, so we need to first of all agree, of course, on what the surah is saying or trying to say or trying to preach. Okay, and then for him to try to improve on it. Of course, that's not the Quran's challenge. Okay, that's just my way of trying to get some people to see an aspect of the Quran that maybe they haven't seen before. All right, I went on a bit too much there. Let me bring on. So I'm gonna remove you because I want to bring somebody else on.
Sure.
So yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna remove you. You can stay backstage. And Aslam, I'm just gonna bring you on. And Perfect Dawah, I'll bring you on afterwards.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you, Aslam?
I'm good. Hope you are as well. We got to know that you also had COVID, so hope you recovered.
Yeah, I recovered. I mean, it was pretty, you know. So the
Yes.
thing now, when somebody says I've had the virus, everybody knows what virus that you're talking about, right?
Huh.
COVID. So yeah, I was sick with it for a while. It was
Mm.
actually pretty bad. I mean, it's a very strange illness. I'm really beginning to think, was this really genetically engineered? Was this actually made in a lab? Because it's a very strange illness. It's not a normal illness, and I'm still actually, even though I'm negative for a long time now, I'm still coughing because of it. A lot of people have
So
told me
after
that
like, yeah.
after it's gone, you're still coughing for a long time. It doesn't
Mm.
really leave you the same afterwards. It's a very strange illness.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, you have recovered finally, mashallah. So I wanted to ask, there is a one hadith. It's something to do with creation. I mean, they say that it's not so. Is my voice audible?
Yeah, your voice is fine.
So it's something to do with creation. So it mentions, they say it's not highly reliable, but I find it very I mean, I find it very relatable. It mentions that God says that I was a hidden treasure and I wanted to be known, and I
Hmm.
created, like, have you heard this hadith?
Yeah. This is like a saying of the Sufis, right? So it's they say
Mhm.
it's hadith. I don't know how strong. I don't know if he even has a chain of narration or anything like that. Probably has a broken chain or something. But it's one of the sayings of the Sufis, which I personally like a lot. I do like it a lot. It's
Yeah.
trying to express why would God create anything in the first place,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Because
yes, it says I was a hidden treasure, and I wanted to be known, so I created the creation so that they may know me. And you can see the Sufi
Mhm.
sort of like hand in that, in terms of, because what are they
Mhm.
saying? Because what do the Sufis want to know, want to try to arrive at? They want to arrive at, ma'rifah, at gnosis of God, right? That's the goal of
Correct.
Sufism. So
Mhm.
this hadith, if likely, I don't know if it's made up or not, but it's put in that
Mhm.
way. I created the creator so
Correct.
that they may know me. I mean, there is the thing of Ibn Abbas, where he says, that, the verse, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, did not create the jinn and the human beings except that they should be in ibadah to me, be in servitude to me. Ibn Abbas
Mhm.
says, commenting that, he says, I mean, i.e., so that they may know me, right? So
Okay.
he has that. That's probably the earliest and closest thing
Mhm.
to that hadith, which closest thing which can be accepted, I think, to that
Mhm.
hadith. Yeah.
Correct. Wonderful. So of lately, actually, I was just reading. You must have heard about one Turkish Muslim scholar. I think you must have heard about him. Harun Yahya. Have you heard about him?
Yeah, of course. Harun Yahya, he did a lot of those books about evolution and evolution deceit and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, it's very colorful. His books were like, I mean,
yeah.
one will get the books and
He's
just
also a
seeing it.
colorful character. The thing about him, look, he was a very strange character. I think ended up going to jail and stuff like this. He basically has started this cult in Turkey. Um, if you just type in, if you want to have a laugh, I mean, this is maybe I shouldn't
But
tell people, but
many a times he says very senseful things. I mean, although he does the thing, mimic and all, but when he speaks, he makes sense as well. I mean, I have observed.
yeah, I mean, look, his books on evolution and stuff, they're just not very scientific. Well, what he tries to criticize
Yes.
science from and this and the other, then they're not done very well at all.
Mhm.
You know,
Correct, correct.
you can look up
No,
you
I'm
can look up
talking
the
about general things. Like if when he talks about values, human values, and all, that times
yeah
he
yeah
makes sense.
yeah. I think he does in that. If, I mean, I'm sure he does on a lot of those things, which are very very well. But I don't know if he. I mean, he ended up making this cult basically, which was where he was always surrounded by these
Yeah,
Turkish women
yeah,
who were dyed their hair
yeah,
blonde and stuff like that. It was
yeah,
very very strange
correct.
when I
So
saw
there is
that.
yeah. So it created a hesitation of sharing his videos to others because
Yeah,
they
it
will.
creates that. Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure in terms of what he was sort of preaching, um, I think it was a lot of value based. In Turkey there's a quite a big sort of Qur'anist sort of like movement and ideas, and a lot of very interesting intellectual work is being done in Turkey in that kind of way. So I
Yeah.
think he went into that
Mm-hmm. Correct.
sort of like
So
he took some of those on board maybe. But to be honest,
correct.
I should just say I really know very little about him. I remember a long time ago reading some of his books about evolution, and you know they're kind of sort of childish in many ways because um, they're just they're not very accurate. You have to really go into the science um,
Mm-hmm. Correct.
pretty
Correct.
deeply, and most people don't
Correct.
have a good scientific background to be able to see that. I mean, I studied science in university, so I
Mm-hmm.
could see that pretty easily.
Correct. Correct. Because why I got like I wanted to understand about this creation and all, because there seems to be some two aspects. One aspect in the Quran, it mentions that in the beginning there was smoke, and then it was water, and then like all minerals started, and then like this. And another aspect, God created Adam, and then because of they disobeying or not, or Satan misleading them, they were saying go into the earth. So two
Mm.
aspects are there. One is showing the process of creation, another is showing that God purposefully telling them go into, as if like he dislikes or
Mm.
God does not like the, like, so these two things are there.
Yeah,
So how?
yeah. I mean, I generally believe that, of course, that Adam was created here on this earth, right? So the garden that was on the earth. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in space and he was sort of like sent down in that kind of way. They were just in a garden. They were told to get down from it, so it was like sort of in a high place. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but look, the Quran doesn't really deal with these things. It doesn't give you a timeline for creation. It doesn't, it's
No, but it
very
does mention that in the beginning it was smoke, and then the water started, and then and then the plantations
mm,
happened, and like this. So some references are there, like
no,
generally.
not exactly. I think maybe you're confusing it with a biblical description. There's a biblical description which
No, no,
says
in
that
Quran,
first thing.
Quranic
There is,
mention that
I
that
think you're
was
talking
actually.
about ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي كالدخان, right? That verse that he that
Correct, correct,
he
correct.
that he turned to the thing and it was like smoke. Again, these things are just
Yes, yes.
so vague, right? So vague,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that you can't really fit it together. You can look at one passage and say, okay, it says that, but you can't fit it together with other passages and get sort of like a good sort of like overall view of how did God create the creation and stuff. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Because
it just
Harun.
and that whole and the whole passage is really it's basically talking about again. Look, it's all of these things that when it comes to science, like what I've been talking about here, when it comes to these
Yes.
kind of sort of things where you're trying to extrapolate science, it's very difficult
Actually,
to do from the
in the
Quran.
Harun. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. The Harun Yahya books, most of the references he tried to, I think, emphasize on these aspects.
yeah,
Harun Yahya, yeah. So I've
yeah.
observed this thing.
It's like, I mean, I agree with like Hussein Nasser, was it Sayyid Hussein Nasser? This is like intellectual suicide, okay? Because
Mm-hmm.
look, really, those verses are not trying to teach science. They're not trying to. You're not going to be able to um, get enough like solid, specific facts in order to make the science from it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it can't. It's just very difficult to think of it in that kind of way. Um,
So,
But like that one, okay. ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي دخان فقال لها وللأرض ائتيا طوعا وكرها قالتا أتينا طاعين. Okay, it says then he turned to the sky and it was like smoke, and he said to it and to the earth, come, either willingly or unwillingly. They said we come willing, we will come willingly. That's well, what are you supposed to get from that verse? Is it trying to teach you the way in which these things were created, or is it trying to teach you that even this heavens on the earth, they were in obedience to God? That's what it's trying to say, right? The verse
mhm.
is that's what the verse is
But,
about.
but-
It's not really about trying to put together a
so
exact way of how creation happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
but what we understand is that that means the universe pre-existed. Uh, Adam, like the human beings, correct? Uh, it's not that the other way around. That first God created Adam, and then it's not the other way around, correct?
No, no, no. I mean, I don't think. No, no, no. Because of course the earth was already there. Okay. No, when right in the beginning, right? When God says to the angels, "I'm going to create a human being on the earth." All right.
Hmm.
I'm going to create. So the earth was there, and He
And then
created Adam on the earth. He created Adam on
and,
the earth already.
and what about the arch on the water? The throne was in the water like that.
Yeah. Again, see these things. First of all, the throne. What is the throne? Okay,
Hmm.
and what is meant by the water here?
Hmm.
It's something which I think Kamal al-Haydari pointed out. The word water is used in the Quran for so many different. It's used like we spoke about here, right? For the
Hmm.
semen, that's water. It's called ma. Okay,
Okay.
the salt water is called ma. The fresh water is called ma. The what comes down from the heaven is called ma. Okay, then there's this kind of arshihu al ma. Okay, and from ma we created every living thing. Okay, and
Yes. Yes.
so it's a very um, it's what kind of fluid, what kind of ma are we talking about here, right?
Hmm.
I mean, would plasma, the plasma that's in the star, would that be considered ma, right?
Hmm.
Because the plasma of the star is made from, okay, it's like a fluid, okay, it's ionized gas really. Okay, stars made from
Hmm.
this ionized gas, superheated gas, where the electrons are ripped from the atoms, etc. Could that be considered a type of ma? So when he says kan arshuhu ala al-ma, what is the arsh anyway? Right? What is the arsh? And it was on the ma. These things are. I mean, one thing I think about when those verses where the Arabs are told, they're basically put in the corner. It's a rhetorical question. They're told.
Hmm.
They ask the question, who is the Lord of Al Arsh? Who is the Lord of the great Arsh? And they answer Allah. They
Yes.
say, يقولون Allah. Okay, but this concept of Allah having Arsh, I don't think they had that. It's not that they knew that. It's because they're being asked a question where the only answer they can give is Allah. It's not because they know
Hmm.
that God has a arsh. And I also think I question the idea that they knew about that they considered that there were seven heavens. All right, that because that is like a common um, 7th century medieval idea. But the Arabs were very basic. They didn't really delve deep into cosmology or have an idea of cosmology or that there are seven heavens or this. Their world was all about muru'ah and chivalry and poetry and
But then,
raiding and yeah.
yeah, I want you to let's say, but a person, let's say, who is from Sweden or who is from Japan, then he
Mm,
approaches the Quran. He's a seeker. He wants to know about life or what is
mm.
this universe. And he approaches the Quran. Then how will he observe these all verses? Like he will be really like very like literally scientifically, or like I mean, I just want to
The-
understand that. Like anyone,
yeah,
like
he
any
might.
human being who wants to, who's a
Yeah,
seeker, basically.
yeah, he might, and I think that's one of the problems now is that, of course, the idea of atheism is so big, right? People think of um, they have the question of atheism in their mind: does God exist? Does God not exist? Right? And if people approach the Quran in that kind of way, it can stump them. If they like right now, I think that's what's happening with this guy called Aaron, which I mentioned to him. Like you're trying to approach the Quran as an atheist and wanting it to convince you of God. The Quran is not going to try to do that. The Quran is not trying to convince anybody that God exists. All right, it basically assumes that everybody believes in God because everybody at the time and for most of human history did believe in God. There were no atheists. Those who are الذين كفروا in the Quran, none of them are atheists. Every single one of them believed in God. Okay, all those who are mentioned as quote unquote unbelievers in the Quran, they are all, every one of them, believers in God. They believe that God exists. Okay, they don't deny it. They believe that He created the heavens and the earth and all that kind of stuff. So how does somebody who is not think? Well, these things, like I said, they're few and far between. These things are like you mentioned this verse here. You can mention another verse somewhere else. Okay, but somebody who's approaching the Quran, a Westerner who's a seeker, like you said, and they're
Yes,
reading
yes.
the
Be a
Quran,
seeker,
they should
basically.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should be focused on what the Quran is mainly saying most of the time, and these sort of things they should basically put them on the side. People can't expect to come and just understand everything. okay, and get it all in one go. The main road signs, the main roads, the broad highways are easy to get in the Quran, and that's what you should get first. But to say you're not going to accept because or you're going to be stumped because of one thing you don't get it, it's can't. You have to have a bit more self-awareness and humility than that. Okay, we can see, like Hassan Maliki says, that you can, I see enough of the sun that I know it's true. And even though I don't know, its diameter, I don't know how far away it is, I don't know, how hot it is exactly. I don't know these exact details, but I get enough from it that I know it's there. Okay, in the same way, you can get enough of the Quran without, there will be things you have to accept that, if this is a book from God, all right, you have to accept that your mind is not going to encompass it completely. Right, that there will be some things which will be a little bit beyond your reach, and some things that maybe you never get, and some things that will take you some time. Like here, like this backbones and rib, for example, right? I for a long time I used to say, look, I don't get it. It's a scientific error. Just put it that way, okay? And did I keep continuing to have belief in the Quran and faith in the Quran, even though I thought, okay, look, for me this literally, as you say, this is wrong. That's what you say. This is wrong. This is an error. Okay.
In fact,
But at the same time,
I
you have to
struggle.
have that honesty. You have to have that sincerity, and say, look,
Correct.
if this looks like error, you say this looks like error. And I think that's one of the things which helps guide you.
Correct.
Ultimately,
Correct.
it really
Correct. In
does.
fact, I
Ultimately,
struggled many times with understanding that the heart has a thinking capacity, as I discussed earlier as well. I was like boggled and I was unable to find the answer that the heart has a thinking capacity. So I was very shocked, and the Quran again and again referencing heart. Then I thought that okay, maybe a literature term, like in English literature also they use heart for many soul and all. But then when you discuss, you did mention some aspects of thinking by the heart also. That was like like a eureka kind of a thing.
Yeah. There are a lot of neurons that the heart does. If you just put in the heart is a second brain into Google, you'll find many articles about that. The heart has so many neurons. It is really like a second brain, and some of the neurons in the heart control the functions of the brain. Okay, so it can be
Correct.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's that's what I'm just trying to say is that you have to understand that some things maybe they're not for you now, maybe for somebody else. Some things are for the specialist, some things are somebody else. There are things in the Quran which you'd have to be like a polymath and know it all, and for everything to be in terms of the things which it talks about in the natural world to get it all in one go. I think. For example, there are still things now which I look at and I say, okay, these are like a scientific error. But because most of the other things are vague, this one for me didn't look vague at all. Okay, saying when I used to read it, say between the backbone and the ribs, and the way people always used to say it, okay, the semen. It's saying the semen comes from between the backbone and ribs. I say, okay, look, this is not this is specific enough that I can look at it and say that's a scientific error. Okay, other things I can say no. Like right now, I don't understand what the seven heavens means. He created seven heavens. Well, I don't know what that means. I can definitely say if somebody like puts me and say, "Look, can't you just admit that this is what this is like the what's it called astronomy that people believed in the 7th century?" I can say yes. And it's wrong. Yes, I can admit that. I can say okay because they used to believe in seven domes, basically one on top of the other, right? And the sun is in like the fourth heaven, and this is in this heaven. Okay, all of that. Yes, I can tell you that that's probably what they believed at the time when they heard that, and maybe they found it acceptable. But of course, now we know it's wrong, and to believe that idea of that cosmology, it's wrong. But how is seven heavens right? How is it correct? I don't know. Like we're living. I see it as we're living in a time where the science doesn't know. Okay,
Correct.
but there will be a time where we'll know. I mean, I don't have to live to see that. I can be comfortable about that. I have a sneaky suspicion with regard to that. I mean, I put this also in that video I made, God's Endgame. Right, I used that movie where they have the principle, right? And one of the things they showed there is that when they took a survey of all of the galaxies that they could see, right? And what they found is that they seem to lie in concentric circles above the Earth. And just counting what they don't mention this, but just counting how many they can see, there's 7 of them, right? So there's like 7 concentric circles of like how the galaxies are spaced from the Earth, right? So, is that it? I don't know. I also have a suspicion that the macro world will mirror the micro world. So if you look at just look at an atom. I don't know if you know a lot about physics or chemistry, but the atom has energy levels,
Yes.
electronic shells. Okay, and if you know the periodic table, it basically mirrors the periodic table. So the first row in the periodic table, that's basically the first energy level. So it's the s orbital. The s orbital. The hydrogen atom has one electron in its s orbital. Helium has 2. It has a full s orbital. Has that shell full. The second row in the periodic table is the second energy level. Okay, and it can take up to 8 electrons. Okay, then the next one has etc. Okay, and the number of periods there are, the number of energy levels on the electron is 7. Right. So I have a intuition or sneaking suspicion that maybe on the macro level, the universe level, okay, it will mirror how matter is, will mirror in some way how the atom is. In terms of the atom having 7, because that's what it is. I mean, if you describe it sort of like in terms of the Quran, okay, you could say that it has 7 heavens, one on top of the other. سبع سماوات طباقا, right? One on top of the other. You could say that, right? About the atom. So could the universe in a way mirror that? Again, I don't know. But right now, when you look at that, and if you were going to extrapolate science from the verses which say there are 7 heavens, you'd have to say that it's scientifically wrong.
Yeah.
And
So
I think it's fine to say that.
that's why actually in the Quran it mentions that human being has been given knowledge a little. Ilmul Qalil, there's verse.
We don't have much knowledge. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٌ. And above every person of knowledge, there's somebody who has more knowledge. Okay, so
Correct.
it's always increasing, and we have to understand when we're talking about the Quran. I mentioned this in the stream about contradictions. When we talk about the Quran, saying that if this was from other than God, you would find in it much contradictions. It's not talking about contradictions with science or with nature or with what we think science is, because when really there is no such thing as science. Science doesn't speak, it doesn't say, it doesn't. There's scientists, there are people, and people make mistakes. Okay,
So
and that's why the science is always changing. So that's why you should never. The Quran is not saying that the Quran will never contradict this science that people have. It isn't saying that. It's talking about its internal contradictions, internal
correct.
things. Okay.
So
Yeah.
what I understand is that what the Harun Yahya and his research has done. So what I understand with this conversation is that in order to prove creation sign, a Quranic verse may not give an accurate result. Just using Quranic verse, yes, this is what I can.
Yeah. I mean, the Quran is not going to give you enough information to be accurate or to be wrong. Okay, it's too vague to be scientifically accurate. It's too vague to be scientifically wrong. Okay, in either way, there's just not enough there. That's a general rule of thumb. Okay, that's what I think is a general rule of thumb when it comes to that.
Sure. Thank you so much. I took a lot of your time.
No, it's fine. It's fine. To be honest, I was the perfect dawah left anyway, which is a pity, but it's fine. I mean, he's a regular here. He'll be back soon.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, no problem. Take care. All right. Okay, if there's anything else, anything on there, anybody want to put something in the chat, let me know. See what were you guys discussing? Yeah, sorry, perfect dawah. If you're watching this later, maybe I'll come and speak to you on your stream, because I think he's starting his one now. Okay. So yeah, maybe I'll end this now, since it doesn't look like anybody else is coming on. Let me check the comments one more time. Iron Man is putting for us some of the verses. Yeah, okay, so I think we'll end it there. Unless anybody else wants to very quickly jump on. I'll stop it there and we'll call it a night, and hopefully, inshallah, see you again next week. Man. Iron Me and Iron Man. Synchronizing. Oh, we have a question here. Let's read it first. Do you think the Prophet knew how to read and write? Looking at the one. Yeah, no, I don't think the Prophet knew how to read and write. But that word, the Nabil Ummi, it doesn't mean unlettered. Okay, it doesn't mean that unlettered. It actually means unscriptured. And by that, it's sort of like it stands in opposition with the Jews who were people of scripture. Okay, so basically, what it's saying, the prophet of the unscriptured, the prophet of the unscriptured. Now, let me see if I can pull it out. There was a very nice screenshot, on my phone anyway, of one of the rabbis who has been asked about this. Let me see, where did it go? He's been asked about what the Nabil Ummi means, because somebody asked him basically, does Nabil Ummi come up in the Jewish scripture? And he says yes, and it means it comes at the Jewish scripture from the Syriac, or I think that's what he says, and it means prophet to the Gentiles, prophet to the nations. Okay, so it means prophet to the other nations other than Jews, basically. Let me have a quick look if I can find. If I can find that reference. It was, what's the name? Abraham's son. Okay, this rabbi called Abraham's son. I think John Abraham's son, or I don't know what his name was. But yeah, it meant for the peoples, and you can see that in terms of how it's played out in that very verse that you mentioned. So I'm going to abandon looking for this on my phone. I've got too many screenshots and stuff like that. I'm not going to be able to scroll around and find that specific one. But if you look at the actual the verse that you're quoting, it's very interesting. I actually had a discussion about this in Twitter. Okay, and Nabil Ummi, first of all, it comes up in, which verse are you talking about? Yeah, so it says, of course, in the beginning in verse 157, okay, it says, speaking about, because this is a conversation, this is God speaking to Moses, right? So the previous verses, verse 155, وَاخْتَارَ مُوسَى قَوْمَهُ سَبْعِينَ رَجُلًا, and Moses, chose from his people 70 men for the meeting with us, etc. Then continues. Then it says, then you have Moses making a prayer, right? And وَاكْتُبْ لَنَا, like verse 156 starts, وَاكْتُبْ لَنَا فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً, and write for us in this dunya hasana, goodness, وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً, and in the akhirah, إِنَّا هُدْنَا إِلَيْكَ, we are guided to you. Then what does God say, answering him? He says, عَذَابِي أُصِيبُ بِهَا مَنْ أَشَاءُ, my punishment, I cause it to strike who I want. And it says, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and my mercy encompasses everything. فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So I shall write it for those who have taqwa. Remember again, taqwa is key. Okay? وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, and give the zakah. And وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, and those who have faith in our signs. Then it says, الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيَّ, those who follow the messenger, the Nabi al-Ummi. Meaning what? Because he's speaking regarding the Jews. Okay? So when he's saying here, Nabi al-Ummi, he's talking about the Nabi who will come to other than the Jews, to the other people, to the unscriptured people, to the nations. As that rabbi said, that Nabi al-Ummi means the prophet to the nations. Okay? To the other nations, not to the Jewish people. That's how they see it. Okay, and it is the prophet in the end is a prophet to the other to the nations. Okay, the Jews, those who understand this, what I'm saying, they look at that. Who accept the prophethood of Muhammad. Sort of, they say yes, he is a prophet, but he's for other than us. It's not for us. He's a Nabi al-Ummi, the Nabi for others, for these other people who don't have the Torah. Okay. So it says الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذين يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة, whom they find written in the Torah and the Injil. Okay, and then later on it says قل, and then the Prophet is commanded to say. So now this mirrors what's mentioned before. So before, this is God speaking to Moses, telling them, those I shall put my mercy for those who who follow the prophet, the messenger, the Nabi al-Ummi, the messenger, the Nabi al-Ummi. And then the next verse has the prophet saying, being commanded, Qul, okay, O Muhammad, now you say, you're going to say that I am him, the one who's mentioned before. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا. O mankind, I am the messenger of God to you, all of you, all together. Meaning what? It's the same thing as saying, Rasulullah ilaykum jami'a, the messenger of Allah to you all, is the same thing as saying, An-Nabi al-Ummi, messenger, prophet to the Gentiles. So I hope that, have a look at those verses together and you'll see how that mirrors. But I wish I could pull out what that rabbi was saying. In fact, I remember just a while ago, I tried to put it somewhere else where it's more easily accessible. But I don't have it. Maybe this one. Oh, darn, I don't want to be scrolling through my phone while the stream is going on and you guys patiently waiting. But maybe I'll get lucky. Looks like I'm not getting lucky. No, sorry. I don't think I'll be able to pull it out now. It's a very interesting quote. Maybe I'll find it and mention it next time. So maybe I went off too much. Did I answer that question? Al-Mir. I don't know if I answered that properly for you. But yeah, he's presented as unlettered prophet. So it doesn't mean unlettered. But, so I didn't answer that question. But also, yes, I don't believe the prophet could read or write. Okay, not because of that verse though. Not because of that verse. The prophet, I believe he couldn't read or write. Okay, but Nabil Ummi doesn't mean unlettered. It just means unscriptured. The Nabi for the Ummiyin. Okay, and you have that same idea in Surah Al-Jum'ah, right? So if you go to Surah Al-Jum'ah, in the beginning of it, the way it talks about he's the one who sent to the Ummiyina, right? To the Ummiyina, a messenger from them, right? And it's basically it says هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم. He's the one who sent to the Ummiyina a messenger from them, reciting to them of their verses of his signs, to purify them and teach them the scriptures and wisdom. And before that, they were in error. And it says, and others of them, okay, meaning what? Others who are also Ummiyin, right? Others who are also Ummiyin, so other nations, okay? ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ شَاءَ. And that is the bounty of our God. He gives it to whom he wills. Why is that being said? It's to sort of like, it's been almost addressed to the Jews, okay, who were not happy that this fadl of revelation went to other than them. And then the next verse speaks of those who received the revelation. It speaks about the Jews. It's مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ حُمِّلُوا التَّوْرَاةَ, the example of those who were given the Torah to carry, but they didn't really carry it. It's an example of a a donkey carrying books. Okay, why is that mentioned? Why are they being mentioned now? Again, it's that division that the Umayyin are those who are other than the Jews, basically. Okay, the unscriptured people. Okay, so these unscriptured people, they are now being given scripture. Okay, and we are being warned in that surah as well by mentioning the Jewish people who received a scripture, but they ended up becoming like donkeys who carried the book but didn't understand it. We are being warned not to be like them, which unfortunately we basically are, because you can have somebody who's memorized the Quran in seven different ways of reciting it or whatever, but in the end he will be basically like a donkey carrying books he doesn't understand. Okay, because doesn't act on it, right? He will tell you that this is abrogated, this is not right, this is this. Give him the simplest thing, where the hadith says one thing and the Quran says something else, and he will say no. Even the most emphatic things, one of the most emphatic sort of hadiths of the Prophet himself, which is in the Quran, is when God commands him to say, قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمٌ عَلَى طَعَامٍ يَطْعَمُهُ. That's a very emphatic, it's a long like preamble of saying, I do not see in what has been revealed to me haram of any food which anybody can eat except that it be, and then it lists them, right? If some of these people, if they would just pretend that that was a hadith from Bukhari, they would accept it. That nothing else is haram to eat, okay, except what's mentioned here. But they won't. They will look at that and say, no, there's also other things which are haram, like the wild animals, carnivores, and things like this. They still say that's haram, and that's based on hadith. Though there are narrations of Aisha, who you should say no. Yeah, and she would quote that verse. I should say, no, you want to eat that thing, you can eat it. The only thing which is haram are what's here. Anyway, I'm gone, I think, too long, so I think we'll end this now. Al-Mir, I don't think he replied if I got his question or not. Anyway, I think we'll end it there. Thank you all so much for coming on, and inshallah see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.